Okay, so right now we're just going to go ahead and start out with an overview of the world so then we can kind of see perspective of how far away the countries are from each other that we're going to be traveling around. Um, so right now we see the overview of the world, and this is just a Google tour to just show how Mexico is doing in their Millennial Development Goals. So right now we're going to go ahead and head over to Idaho Falls, Idaho, where Trey is from. We're just going to go ahead and look at Trey's house. So then from there we're going to go to Mexico. So we'll just give that a minute to adjust. And we'll move over a little bit so we can see what's actually on the screen. Okay, so after we look at this house, then we're just going to go ahead and head over all the way to where my developing country for the year is, and so that's Mexico. Okay, so we can see that we're going to go from all the way to Trey's house, clear to the whole country of Mexico. And Mexico is a really big country, and a lot of people know Mexico as a resort, and some places are really nice, but there's also a lot of places that are poor. And so right now we want to kind of, in this Google tour, we kind of want to show what parts of Mexico need a little help, and of course just touch on all the other developing goals, the last 4 developing goals. So we will go ahead and now head over to my hometown, which is Almancena, Mexico. It's in the state of Chihuahua, Mexico. Okay, so here we are in my hometown, Almancena, and from here we're going to go to the nearest hospital because we're going to be talking about the Millennial Development Goal of maternal health. The nearest hospital to Almancena is actually, it's 11 minutes away. So we're just going to go there right now. This hospital is called Hospital Cima, and it, like I said, is 11 minutes or 6.5 kilometers away. Let's just wait for it to load here. So if you're in Almancena, then this is a pretty good location because it is so close. But that's not the case for most places in Mexico. Most states in Mexico only have about 2 hospitals, and other than that, there's about 100 in all of Mexico City. And I just want you to imagine only having 2 hospitals in Idaho. As I'm talking, this is going to the next nearest hospital. It would be probably 3 hours away from the original place, so my hometown. It's right on the border, so it's in Juarez. And this is a more developed and somewhere that probably most people will want to go to get all their services done. So we can kind of see how far that is away. But like I said, there's over 100 hospitals in just Mexico City when there's only 2 in just other states. And so we can see that a lot of people would have to travel pretty far to get to a good hospital. And since this is maternal health, we're going to talk about how women are affected by this. In some parts of Mexico, so the parts that are less developed or more in poverty, the women there are expected to only about 75, the women of Mexico are 70% more likely to die from childbirth than any other area. And so that just kind of illustrates how some parts, probably not in Mexico City, would have a harder time having kids. And then hospitals and other resources aren't as close as some would like, but Mexico's overall maternal health has definitely improved, and it's improved by 36% since 1998. Okay, so from there we're going to move on to the next Millennial Development Goal, and that is number 6, and it is to combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. So here we are, and we're at a place, it's in Mexico City, where most of the hospitals are, like I said, and it would be 13 hours away from my hometown. And it is the best HIV clinic in Mexico. And so you can imagine that this is out of the way for people that need help. But let me just hurry and look here. AIDS and HIV aren't really such a huge problem in Mexico, but it is a problem. About 2%, or sorry, about 0.2% of the population has AIDS or HIV, so about 190 out of 100,000. But it's still hard for those that have diseases because they'll most likely have to travel far distances. Although it isn't as bad in other countries, although it isn't as bad here, the stats have been rising over the past 2 years, and I'll explain why. It is because Mexico has a lot of immigrants, and not most of them, but some of them are illegal immigrants. So they'll go to another country and they'll participate in risky behaviors such as drug cartels or human trafficking. And when they're doing that, leads to them acquiring these diseases. And so then when they are deported back to their country, then they spread the diseases to other people in Mexico. And so it has actually been rising over the past few years. And like I'm showing here in Juarez, it's right along the border of Texas, and so that's where where HIV and AIDS is the biggest problem. And so we can see that from Juarez to Mexico City, where we were before, that is a huge gap or a huge distance that they'd have to travel to get help with their diseases. And like I said before, it is still not affected too much. It's still 0.2 to 0.3% infected with these diseases. And so the Millennial Development Goal was to keep it at about 0.4%, and so Mexico is one of the few countries who are on target, like I showed in the map above, where Mexico was a green country and most other countries were red. It just shows that they're on target with this. Okay, so we're going to move on to the 7th, and it's to ensure environmental sustainability. So Mexico is known for their pollution, and especially to the air and the water. And in a 1998 survey, Mexico City was rated as the most dangerous place for children to live due to the air pollution. So that's what we're looking at right now. Mexico City has so many people in it. In 1950, it only had 3 million, and now it has 20 million. So we can imagine that with all those people, they also have cars, and the cars are also older, and so it just shows how much it has changed and how it does have so much pollution. And the reason that it is such a problem is because of the lack of interest in the problem, and it's because it's hard to get people involved. And to clarify that is most of the time they actually have to give special education to those who will help clean up, and so that costs money, and people aren't interested in facing this huge problem. And so it's hard for people to look at it and want to undertake it because it is such a big problem, because it is one of the most polluted cities in the world. But once again, Mexico is on target when it comes to environmental sustainability. Okay, so a lot of people know that Mexico is a place where people are really cautious about what they drink, and when people go visit, everybody's always says, don't drink out of the tap, always get a water bottle. And so I'm pretty sure most people have heard that, and so obviously it's a pretty big problem. So I'll just go ahead and touch on that because I found this really interesting. When I was reading an article, they said that it's not necessarily pollution but it's water sitting stagnant, and so I guess that is pollution, but that's the reason for why. Um, and let me just hurry and look. And like these pictures are showing, most of the first picture I showed, he has to transport water to help to get water to people because they can't drink any other way. The reason that it is polluted is because the water travels through underground pipes, but also because when households collect water, they collect it on tanks on the top of their houses. And so, as you can imagine, these tanks sit there stagnant, and they're not going to use all the water in one day. And so the water at the bottom or at the top, whatever, it's sitting there stagnant, like I said. And so it grows bacteria, and it just poses a huge problem. And so when they're getting it out of their tap, then it's already contaminated. And it's contaminated by like the bacteria, like I said, but also insects that will sneak in. And then, so when the water sits stagnant outside the elements, the bacteria grows easily and insects find their way in. And all of this leads to the use of water bottles. And that is all that people drink out of in Mexico. And the amount of waste that all of the bottles produce is another problem in and of itself. And once again, Mexico is still on target for their MDG goal. Okay, so right now we're going to move on to the proportion on people without access to drinking water. That is Global Partnership for Development. So we're at an internet cafe. Let me try to clear this up. Okay, so part of the 8th goal is the issue of internet access. Mexico has been working on making internet easier to access, and there are a lot of internet cafes in each state of Mexico. But here we are. This internet cafe is in Chiapas, and that is the poorest state in Mexico. And this is just an internet cafe, like I said. But I could only find about 3 internet spots in the entire state. And so if you can imagine, that's pretty sparse compared to if we had only 3 in all of Idaho. But on my website, we studied the lecture about the world is flat, and I researched more about the internet access that is in Mexico, and about 36.5% of the Mexican population has internet access. And when you compare that to the 98% of Americans that have some form of internet access, it does seem pretty low, but Mexico actually has a higher percentage than most other developing countries. Earlier, Mexico actually set a lofty goal to bring laptops into the poorest areas and at least 1 laptop into every classroom. But both goals have not been met and were mostly abandoned. But like I said earlier, they're still significantly better than other developing countries. Okay, so overall, Mexico has done really well when it comes to meeting the Millennial Development Goals. Yes, they are considered a developing country still, but they are working hard to improve the lives of the people of Mexico, and I think that it shows in how they have hit almost every target, and I'll show that here. All right, thanks for watching.